In this week's Shiur, Be'ez Hashem, will be on the Parsha. We have the Aseres Adibris, Parshas Yisroi. One of the Aseres Adibris is Shabbos, the mitzvah of Kiddush, the mitzvah d'oraisa of Kiddush. We're not going to speak about the dinim and the halachas of Kiddush, but rather the bracha that we make by Kiddush. We're going to try to go through how the Rishonim, the Achronim explain the bracha of Kiddush. Before the bracha, the Emma says, before any bracha that you make, if you're moitzi somebody, many have the minhag to say brashos. Yeah, before the moitzi, if you're being moitzi other people, before brachas, shvuas in the morning, if somebody's moitzi, you say brashos. And the Emma says that by Kiddush also we say brashos. We say B'lashon Aram as Savri. L'kuta Mariach explains why. So I just want to open the Shiur with saying Brashos. My father is here by the Shiur. It's a kavod and a schus to be able to have my father present this morning by the Shiur. The mitzvah, the oraisa of Kiddush, is in this week's parsha. The first pasuk in the psukim of Shabbos and Aseres Adibur, Zocher es Yom HaShabbos L'Katshoi. It's interesting, in the Rishonim, these are discussion, we're not going to focus on that, but these are discussion if the mitzvah of Kiddush is learned from the beginning of the pasuk, Zocher, that's maybe even more the pashtus. Zocher, to remember Shabbos. How do you remember Shabbos? By making Kiddush, b'doiraisa. The Ramban, ala Torah, the Ramban says, Zocher es Yom HaShabbos L'Katshoi, that the Kiddush is actually learned from the word L'Katshoi, being Mekadosh, b'dvarim. But al kaponim, it's clear from the pasuk of Zocher es Yom HaShabbos L'Katshoi, we learn that there's a mitzvah to say the oraisa, to make Kiddush. When the Rambam brings it, in Hilchas Shabbos, the Rambam brings the mitzvahs learned from the pasuk. He brings the whole pasuk. Like I mentioned a minute ago, we're not going to go into the halachas. These many halachas in Hilchas Kiddush. We hope to Be'ez Hashem learn it soon in the night. We're learning Hilchas Shabbos. But this morning we're going to try to focus on the bracha of Kiddush. If anybody wants, you could open up a siddur, follow along. Before the bracha, means before going through the words in the bracha itself starts, Baruch Atah Hashem. Davud Raham, one of the Rishonim, asks, he brings the Yerushalmi already that asks the Shaila, why is it that the bracha starts bebaruch? There's a klal, being that it's a bracha smucha lechavrita. There's a bracha right before, which is a hagafen, that we already said a baruch. The next bracha, Asher Kedishanim Mitzvos of Shabbos Kotche B'Ava V'Rotzain, should start without the baruch. As I fragt the Yerushalmi, and answers that Hayois, it's shaykh to make Kiddush without Hagafen. Yeah, Shoyse Yayin Kol Hayoim. If a person is drinking Friday wine and then comes Shabbos, do you do it the Halacha, the Gemara? If Purim falls out on a Friday, next year it's going to be like that, Tavshin Pei Hey. These are halacha, a person can continue while he's eating the Sudas Purim, Peiros Mapa Makadish. When you continue into Kiddush, you don't make another Hagafen because you're drinking wine the whole day. Hayois, in such a case, you make Kiddush without the Hagafen, so Mela, the bracha was mesukin with a Baruch Atah Hashem. You start the bracha, Birchas Kiddush, with a Baruch Atah Hashem, because sometimes you make Kiddush without Agafen. And Mamela goes on to explain that that's the same thing by Havdalah also. The last bracha in Havdalah, the Hamavdal, also starts with a Baruch. There are three brachas before, so the Hagafen is the same thing. You can make you can be drinking wine Shabbos afternoon by Shalosh Shudas, and then you make Havdalah, so you don't make another Hagafen. And Boyer Besamim or Boyer Mo'ireish is the same thing also, that you can make it later. If a person's making Avdal, he doesn't have Besamim, so you have the Besamim later. So Mele Shaykh to make Avdal without a Hagafim, without Besamim and Boyer Mo'ireish, so Mele it starts with a Baruch. Then he goes on to ask, good, so that's why we start with a Baruch. But why does the bracha end with a Baruch as well? Birchas Kiddush is a Birchas HaMitzvahs, like any other Birchas HaMitzvahs. It's Birchas HaMitzvahs, it's a Birchas HaMitzvahs. So you ask, just like any other Birchas HaMitzvahs, Baruch Atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech hamasher kedishanu b'mitzvosav, al natil asulav. So here the Kiddush is the mitzvah, and we say the Kiddush. So why do we end with a bracha? So for that he answers and he says, Hayos, it's a long bracha. So mainly we end off Mishum Arichas of the bracha, we kind of end off the bracha also, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mekadosh HaShabbos. Now we'll go a little bit into the bracha itself, the bracha of Kiddush, the mitzvahs Aseh D'Oraisa of Kiddush. The first part of the bracha says Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvosav v'ratzavanu. This is what we say. V'Shabbos kacha b'av v'ratzavanu zikaron l'maisa b'reishis. Zikaron l'maisa b'reishis. Kiddush, the Kiddush that we're making, we're saying that Shabbos is zikaron l'maisa b'reishis. How do we know that Shabbos is zikaron l'maisa b'reishis? Avad, right here in this week's parsha, Aseres Adibris, the pasuk says, Zocher Asiyah b'Shabbos HaKatsha Sheishis Yom Tavoid Ki Sheishis Yom. The pasuk says that it's Zecher L'Maisa B'Reishis. So the Torah explains, and the Torah says that we keep Shabbos Zikaron to the Rabbeinu Shalom that kept Shabbos the first week after creating the world in 6 days. The seventh day, the Eibishter rested. So too Zak the Torah explaining, we also rest the seventh day, b'chahai gavna, just the same day, b'doimet, how the Eibishter rested the seventh day. Like how the Torah says is that what is b'doimet a sheishis me'bereishis? Means technically, if we would rest the fourth day of the week to remember that would be Zakar, and we rest the same day that the Rabbi Shalom rested. That's Zakar and L'maisa Bereishis. Then, so that's clear. Shabbos is Zikaron L'maisa Bereishis. Then we go on and we say in Kiddush, Tchila L'Makroi Kodesh Zeichel Yitzias Mitzrayim. So where is it that Shabbos is Zeichel Yitzias Mitzrayim? What's the Makoyer for the words of the Kiddush? Is weiter the psukim in the Torah in Parshas V'Eschanan, in the Aseres Adibris, in Parshas V'Eschanan, when the Torah says to keep Shabbos, the Torah says Zeicher L'Yitzias Mitzrayim. So the beginning of Kiddush we say Zeicher L'Maaseh Bereishis is in this week's Parshas Aseres Adibris. Late when we say weiter Zeicher L'Yitzias Mitzrayim, the Makoyer is in the Aseres Adibris in Parshas V'Eschanan. With what is Shabbos Zeicher L'Yitzias Mitzrayim? We understand why it's Zeicher L'Maaseh Bereishis. That we understand. It's klar. That says that the Torah says, because the Eibishter made the world and rested the seventh day, so to us. But with what is Shabbos Zeicher L'Yitzias Mitzrayim? So these different pshatim in the Rishonim. The Torah starts off to say that the emes is it's a chiddush, because really the pasuk in Eschanan says Zeicher L'Yitzias Mitzrayim. The Torah says that really lav dafka Shabbos is Zeicher L'Yitzias Mitzrayim. Now, what did we say? Tchila L'Makroi Kodesh. In other words, in Parshas Emor, the parsha that brings all the Mayadim, the beginning of the Mayadim is Shabbos. So Shabbos is Tchila L'Makroi Kodesh. The Shabbos is before to the Psukim, to the Makroi Kodesh, to the Parshias of the Mayadim. Mayadim is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's what the Torah says. Not that Shabbos is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Shabbos is before Mayadim in Parshas Emor, which the Mayadim is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's what the Torah says. L'maisa, Lafi this, so then Shabbos is not Badafka connected to Zeichel Yetzias. It's not a Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's Shabbos that's before the psukim of Mayadim, that the Mayadim is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Meili brings the Ramban. The Ramban is in Parshas Veschanon, Taka by the Luchas Shnius that says Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. And he says like this: Shabbos, as we understand in this week's Parsha, is Zeichel L'Maaseh Bereishis. However, there's nobody that could attest, that could be made, that was there on the Maaseh Bereishis. Maybe Adam Arishon Taka was there Friday into Shabbos. But Oifen Amol, a person needs a chizek Taka in this set of Zeichel L'Maaseh Bereishis. Maybe he'll be mesupik about it. Maybe Taka there wasn't a Maaseh Bereishis. If somebody needs a chizuk in the Amunah of Maaseh Bereishis, he could refer to Yetzias Mitzrayim. To say it's the nisim that the Rabbi Shalom made, the nisim of Yetzias Mitzrayim, that should be a chizuk for a person for Zeichel Maaseh Bereishis. But Oifen, Zok the Ramban, that Zeichel Maaseh Bereishis, he says really goes both ways. But one of the ways is Zeichel Maaseh Bereishis, Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, meaning to say is that the Yetzias Mitzrayim, why is Shabbos Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim? Because to be able to have a chizuk that the Eibishter created the world, Zeichel Maaseh Bereishis, we remember Yetzias Mitzrayim, and Yetzias Mitzrayim will be machazek the first Zeichel Maaseh Bereishis. Clear? Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim is to help us. You know why Shabbos is here to a Zeichel for Yetzias Mitzrayim? Because a person might need a chizuk at Zeichel Maaseh Bereishis to be able to remember on Shabbos Yetzias Mitzrayim. So that'll be a Zeichel for Maaseh Bereishis. There are other pshatim in the Rishonim to explain the Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Why is Shabbos Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim? The Even Ezra says, where in Shabbos do we find that it's Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim? The din of Shvisas Eved. Both places, by both sides over here, the Aseres HaDibros and Parshas Yisro, inside the Aseres HaDibros and Parshas Veschanon, it's very clear. The pasuk says that a person has to rest, that a person's Eved has to rest. It's in the Psukim. It's a siman in Shulchan Aruch, going through the dinim that a person, not only a person has to rest, is Eved Kanani. You have the person's mitzvah that his Eved has to rest. Why? Because you should remember, because we should remember that we were avodim in Mitzrayim, and we worked, and the Eibusha took us out of Mitzrayim. So come to Chayis, if you want to know where and with what the Shabbos Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, one din, the din of Shvisas HaEved, that your Eved is not allowed to work, that's Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. However, the Rishonim, the Ramban that I mentioned before, asks on the Even Ezra, and he says, Einoi Nochen. Because just like the whole entire Shmira Shabbos, the whole Shabbos is Zeichel Maaseh Bereishis, we rest Shabbos to remember that the Eibishter rested the seventh day, to remember Maaseh Bereishis. Zakter Ramban, the same thing would also be not only Lagabe Zeichel Maaseh Bereishis, Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim also. He says it's not just one halacha in Hilchas Shabbos that reminds us for Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's the whole Shabbos that reminds us. And that's what Taka the Ramban goes on to say, what we mentioned before, that Shabbos, the whole entire Shabbos, is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim for a chizuk for Zeichel Maaseh Bereishis.
Klal Yisrael themselves have Shabbos off. That way before, that's almost like a Haskalah. That's at the beginning of the Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's not just, it's probably not just one prop. Moshe got Yisrael to be off Shabbos before the Malchus. So that's call it Kapilas Yetzias Mitzrayim.
So you have a good point. I'm going to get to Tosfos right now, the Maram in Rutenberg. You say you want to try to be Meyasher the Even Ezra, that really it all started when. But the emes is, so then really what you're saying really is that the whole Shabbos is Eichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, which we're going to see right now in a minute. Tosfos, very good, very good. The Even Ezra says you bring out very well. You can understand that's the Ramban's kasha, but the Even Ezra is saying that only one part of Shabbos, Shvisas Ha'eved, that's Eichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. You bring it out well. The effect Ramban, only one part of Shabbos is Eichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Tosfos and Psachim Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Beis brings the Maram Rutenberg that quotes the Medrash based on the Pasuk, that the Pasuk says that the Mitzrayim made us work Avdu Behem Beforach. Zok the Medrash Beforach and Atbash. To say, so if the letters connected each other, the Aleph is connected to Tov, the last letter, Beis connected, which is the second letter, connected the second to last letter, Atbash. If you go through those letters, Porach, the Pei is a few letters from the end, goes to Keneged Vav, Reish is Keneged the Gimel, and Chaf is Keneged the Lamed. Lamed Gimel Vav, that's 39. The Mitzrayim made us work Beforach with the 39 Malachas of Shabbos, and therefore we got Shabbos that we do not work the Lamatas Malachas. But Oifen, that's Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, that says we went out of Mitzrayim, we stopped working in Mitzrayim, the Lamatas Malachas. So every Shabbos, when we make Kiddush, we don't do Malacha. First of all, it's to remember that the Rabbi Shalom didn't do Malacha the seventh day of the creation. V'oid, we don't do Malacha to remember that the Eibusha took us out of Mitzrayim. We were in Mitzrayim, we did the Malachas, the Lamatas Malachas, and now we stopped doing the Malachas. So come to Chais, what we have so far is, in Kiddush, we say Zeichel Amaisa Bereshis, and we say Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Each one is mentioned in the Luchas, and this week's Parsha, one of Parshas Scheiner. The Shaila is, however, very nice. We explained different Eifanim with what the Shabbos Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. But why is it necessary to mention it in Kiddush? And I'll explain. The mitzvahs aseh d'oraisa of Kiddush is this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha, Zocher as Yom HaShabbos L'Katshoi, and then the Pasuk says, Zeichel Amaisa Bereshis. It is true that Shabbos is also Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. But do we have to put into Kiddush all the Inyanim of Shabbos and all the Havanas of Shabbos? When we make Kiddush on Shabbos, we're focusing on what the Torah says, the mitzvah of making Kiddush, and the Torah says, Kiddush is Zeichel Amaisa Bereshis. Why is it Nergeya to also say Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim? So the emes is, it's a Gemara. The Gemara in Psachim, the Gemara says, Amr of Acha bar Yaakov, V'tzorech sheyizkor Yetzias Mitzrayim b'Kiddush. It's a Gemara. And why? Zok the Gemara with a drasha. It's a drasha. Ksiv hacha leman tiskoyer. Hacha, because it's in the Gemara in Psachim, as Yom Tzeis Chaberetz Mitzrayim. Uksiv, over here in our parsha, Zocher Yom HaShabbos L'Katshoi. The says with a drasha to Kiddush, Zocher Yom HaShabbos L'Katshoi really doesn't say Yetzias Mitzrayim, but the Gemara has a drasha. It's a drasha. That's why you have to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim by Kiddush. A drasha. So it was a good shiur we asked, why do you have to mention? Avad, it's a Gemara, but the Gemara says with a drasha. Without a drasha, we wouldn't know to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's a drasha, at kedei kach, that the Minchas Chinuch says that it's midoiraisa, and it's ma'akev midoiraisa in Kiddush to mention Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's doiraisa. It's a drasha. The Gemara is a drasha, it's doiraisa. And the Minchas Chinuch asks two things. First of all, why doesn't the Chinuch in the mitzvah, in this week's parsha, the mitzvah of Kiddush, why doesn't the Chinuch say that part of the mitzvah is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim? V'oid, fragt the Minchas Chinuch, the Maggid Avram, amongst other achronim, these Reb Kiveger about it, Bahandel, Hayois, we really made Kiddush already by davening. Ala Kaises, the Rabbanim, Apashtis, we already made Kiddush by davening. So come to Chais, the Kiddush that we make Friday night by the Suda comes out as only the Rabbanon, because you already made Kiddush by davening. The Nafkamina, if ladies are mechuyev and the man already davened, so come to Chais, it's the Rabbanon being Moitzi Deraisa. Kivegas speaks about it. He says maybe if you say Good Shabbos, you already Yotze. It's a whole discussion for itself. But Al Kaponim, the Nidun and the Achroinim is that you already Yotze Kiddush by davening. Frekt the Minchas Chinuch, how are you Yotze Kiddush by davening? Yitaka said in davening Kiddush, the Chelek of Kiddush, to remember Zeichel HaMaaseh Bereishis, but where in davening did you say Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim? To mention Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim is also Daraisa, and you didn't mention it by davening. Sagt the Minchas Chinuch, Enechanami Taka, a Shabbos that falls in Yom Tif, their Taka Kiddush Friday night of Yom Tif will be the Rabbanon, because he already mentioned Kiddush. By davening with Yetzias Mitzrayim. But Dr. Minchas Chinuch, on a regular Friday night when you come to Kiddush, it's Deraisa because he didn't say Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's how he concludes. He bleibt so tzarachin on the Magen Avram.
But you said Yetzias Mitzrayim in reference to the regular, not in reference to Shabbos.
Lamaisi, you mentioned it. You want to know if mitzvah strichas kavana, you have to have a mind, and when you say Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim Friday night of Yom Tif, that you're also saying it for Shabbos as Kiddush.
Of the Yom Tif, in reference to Yom Tif, not saying in reference to Shabbos.
You do mention Shabbos there as well.
But it says Yom HaShabbos, but that's enough.
Yeah, you're mentioning both.
It's a good aura. You're asking that Lamaisa, when you're saying Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, we're saying that Yom Tov is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. During davening Shemaines Avad, you say Shabbos also. Good. I hear ha'ara. You're saying, this Likud that the Minchas Chinuch says that Yom Tov Yitaka Yotze by davening. I hear ha'ara. Lamaisa, this meduber of the Minchas Chinuch, that he says clearly that you're not Yotze by davening, the Bir Alocha, in the Siman of Kiddush and Hilchas Shabbos, Siman Reisha and Aleph, he goes through this Ba'arichas, it's a long Bir Halacha, and then he brings Vishamati, that the Minchas Chinuch says that it's the Eraisa. The Chavetz Chaim tries to be Meyashev by saying that maybe it's only the Rabbanon, the Gemara says a drasha, it's a smachta ba'alma, though the Minchas Chinuch himself, he says you can't say it's asmachta, it's a drasha, gemura, gzer, shava, it's not asmachta. The Chavetz Chaim says weiter that maybe we actually do mention by davening in Hashkivenu, in Kriyashma, which is connected to Shemayin Esrei. The Chavetz Chaim, he says that it's a doichik, and l'maisa, halacha, he blimes with a tzarachin, and he says you have to be choishish for the shitas, that when you make Kiddush Friday night, even though you daven Shemayin Esrei, it's deraisa. However, even though we saw up until now that Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, we saw the reasons, But we saw the Minchas Chinuch with a Klorkite, that even the Chavetz Chaim that tries to be Meyashiv really comes out Ladina that it's the Raisa, because it's a drasha. If you take a look in the Gemara says, Yemasker Yetzias Mitzrayim. The Rashbam, that Gemara that we saw with the drasha, the Rashbam says, Yemasker Yetzias Mitzrayim. Where? We're only masker by Kiddush. The Rashbam says Yemasker Yetzias Mitzrayim also by davening, but Tvila and by davening. The Rashbam. So the shaila is, we do not mention Yetzias Mitzrayim by davening. That's the Minchas Chinuch. We don't mention Yetzias Mitzrayim. So what's the Rashbam saying on that Gemara when the Gemara says that a person is supposed to be masker Yetzias Mitzrayim? Zok the Rashbam by davening and by Kiddush. By Kiddush here, that's what we're speaking about. He said Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. But where's by davening? The Tosfos asks a shaila. So the Sfas Emes answers. This Sfas Emes is an Oitzim Mechtav Ma'amarim, a letter, and the Sfas Emes says the following: a gewaldige Chiddush how to learn the Gemara. He says that the Gemara in Pesachim is speaking about Leil HaSeder, Pesach by night. It's a Gemara Pesachim. It's not talking about every Shabbos of the year. Leil HaSeder. Leil HaSeder, these are mitzvah the Oraisa of Kiddush. Up until now, we're only talking about Friday night. The Psukim in the Torah are talking about Friday night. The Gemara over there of Achas being Machadash, that is a mitzvah saseh the Oraisa of Kiddush Pesach by night. And yes, with a drasha. Because without a drasha, how would you ever know that is a mitzvah the Oraisa of Kiddush Leila Seder? But we only know Friday night from the Psukim. So there's a drasha. For that, it's up to Rashbam that we yoytze this Doiraisa side by davening and side by Kiddush. Leila Seder, we talk of Pesach by night, by davening also, we say Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. So first of all, if you stop right here for a minute, it's a gewaldige Kiddush that the Kiddush Leila Seder is Doiraisa. I don't remember if we had Shiur, but it was in the morning koil and the night koil, but a meduber lagabe the Shiurim and the kois of Leila Seder. So there's a tshuvas Ramosha about the Shiur, the Chumra, the Kula, if it's the Rabbanan, the Raisa, and Dr. Ramosha that one should be more machmer when the Leila Seder falls out to be Friday night, because come to Chayis, the Kiddush is the Raisa. But if you stop here for a minute, from this Sfas Emes, it comes out that b'miyuched Leila Seder, the Kiddush is the Raisa. Ba'al Kolpanim, back to the Kiddush over here, we say Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. The Minchas Chinuch says Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim that we mentioned in Kiddush is the Raisa. Zok the Sfas Emes, Pesach by night, it's the Raisa. However, the other nights, the other Friday nights, it's the Rabbanon. Why is it Bechlal? Why is it even a Drabanon? Zaktas Vasebes, and that means I saw also the Chidah, and Chaim Shal says the same Yesoid, because he's Miyashav on the tour. Remember we mentioned before that the tour says, we say Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim in Kiddush, only because it says Tchilul Makroi Kodesh, and for Yom Tov it's Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. But the Gemara says he's supposed to be masker Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's only coming in as a agavdik. Zok the Chidah, bedoyma like what the Sfas Emes says also, the only reason we say in Kiddush every Friday night Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, that the Kiddush should be synchronized, it should be the same. Every Kiddush that we make should be the same outline, so to speak. So if Pesach by night we say Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, and mainly we say Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim every Friday night. But the etzem, the chiyuv, the Oraisa of Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim is only Leila Seder. There's a few other nekudas to go in. Maybe it'll be a part 2. just what we're not speaking about it. One of the parts said in the title, what we leave out, Kivanu v'acharta v'sana kedashta mikol ha'amim. It's in parentheses. If you do say it, you don't say it, that has a whole meduber for itself, the Rishonim b'dachronim. I just want to conclude the Shiur with a vart from my grandfather, Ramot Yehuda Lubart, Talmud and Chachma Lublin in a Sefer, that he explains. We spoke the whole Shiur in Kiddush, Zecher Maisa Bereshis and Zecher Litzias Mitzrayim. And Be'ez Hashem, tonight's Kiddush, whether if you're baking Kiddush or you're listening to someone's Kiddush, hopefully a little bit more of understanding what the words in Kiddush, a chelik of it. But we see clearly that it's Zecher Maisa Bereshis and Zecher Litzias Mitzrayim. We saw in the Ramban that Litzias Mitzrayim is to help with Zecher L'Maisa Bereshis. He explains the following, and he says these two nekudas that Shabbos is a Zecher for, like what we see clearly. Shabbos, these one Shmir Shabbos is Bekum Vasei, and B'Shev Al Tasa, Zocher V'Shamar. The B'Shev Al Tasa, not to do malachas, that's one chelik, and then there's another chelik of Bekum Vasei of Shmir Shabbos, and he explains the following. That splits up in what Shabbos is a Zecher for. The Shmir Shabbos, that we rest, that we don't do malachas, that chelik of Shabbos, that Zecher L'Maisa Bereshis, that the Eibishter, after 6 days, the Eibishter rested also. That's that chelik of Shabbos, Zecher L'Maisa Bereshis. But then there's another chelik, as in Parshas V'Aschanon, that's lagabe the kum vasei, that is a din of kavod, of oinig. What's the vart over there? There's one thing that a person doesn't do malachas, but then there's another thing that a person is still an eved. He's not doing malachas. A person can, keep Shabbos, sleep through the whole entire Shabbos. He didn't do a single malacha. He kept Shabbos. But the other chelik of Shabbos, the chelik of Shabbos that Zecher Litzias Mitzrayim, when we were Mitzrayim and we were Avodim, we weren't able to be connected. We were Avodim. Like the Medrash says, that's why Moshe Rabbeinu got Shabbos. We were Avodim. Zecher Litzias Mitzrayim, that we went out of Mitzrayim, we were no more Avodim and Meshubed and not connected. That's the chelik of Shabbos, of the Bekum Vasei, the Kavod, the Oinig, that a person can be focused, not just by not doing malachas. So that's the chelik of, the first chelik of Shabbos, of Librias Ha'olam. That's just that the Eibishter on the 7th day didn't do malachas. We also don't do malachas. Then there's another chelik, the second chelik, saying Kiddush, the second chelik, Zecher Litzias Mitzrayim, is not just that we don't do malachas. There's actually another chelik, a chelik of Shmir Shabbos, that it's Bekum Vasei, the Kavod, the Oinig, the chelik of Shabbos, to connect to the Kedusha Shabbos. That's Zecher Litzias Mitzrayim, that we went out of Mitzrayim, we were no more Avodim, we went to be Makabel the Torah. That was the chelik that Shabbos is supposed to remind us to be able to connect to the Torah, to Avodah. Have a wonderful Shabbos.